everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Andrea. It's nice to have you guys here. It is time for another books I read last month video. So this is going to be the books that I read in the month of September. I'm really excited to share these with you because some of them were really good. There really wasn't a single dud in the bunch, which I love months like that. And there were some pleasant surprises. Diving right in. The first book I read was the Physic Book of Deliverance Dane. Try not to blind you with the screen. And this is by Catherine Howe. I really enjoyed this. There's a sequel called The Daughters of Temperance something, and so I really want to read that, but the first book was priced pretty reasonably on Kindle. The second book is like $15, so haven't pulled the trigger on that yet. I might look to see if I can get it hard copy used for cheaper, but yeah, I really liked the first one. So the book is about a scholar of American kind of pre-colonial history and history of science, but also like history of witches. I don't know how much of the book I want to say because I don't want to give it away. She's a PhD student. At the start of the book, she goes through her oral exam, and so she just makes candidacy at the very start of the book. And then she has to help out her mom by going to her grandmother's old house to fix it up so that they can sell it. So she moves into this place for the summer. Stuff about the family history and secrets about the family, bits about witches and the history of witches and the Salem witch trials. It does bounce between historical time periods, so it bounces between the 90s, where the main character is a grad student, and then goes back to the time of the Salem witch trials. I've always been fascinated by that particular time in American history. I've always been fascinated by the history of witches. Really, really loved it. Like I said, I don't want to give too much away, but if you like time-hopping stories, or I think they're called time slip stories. If you like stories that bounce between time periods, you'll like this one. If you like history and books that delve into history, particularly women's history, I think if you liked Deborah Harkness's All Souls, you'll like it. They're not exactly the same. They're not exactly the same kind of genre, but there's a lot of similarities. And so I think that was one of the things that drew me to this book, because I do like the All Souls trilogy. And so it sounded like this book would be a good one for me. So the next book I read was hard copy, and that is this book, which is I Invited Her In and She Took Everything by Adele Parks. Okay, so this book, so the initial premise is these women were friends at university. One of them got pregnant at 19 and dropped out of university, or finished eventually, but like she dropped out of the social group and dropped out at least for the time. And so she kind of lost touch with her friend. Her friend now emails her 20 years later, 10 years, 15 years. It doesn't say in the description, but it does say in the book. So she emails her, so the main character is Mel and her friend Abby. Abby emails Mel after many years, and Abby has gone on to have this incredible career and seems to have this really glamorous life. And she emails Mel to say that she's getting a divorce and she's coming back to London or England. She's been living in LA or New York, one or the other, working as like a TV host. And so she's getting divorced, she's moving back to the UK, and she wants to reconnect with old friends. Could they meet up? And Mel ends up inviting Abby to come and stay to visit, thinking that Abby would only stay for like a weekend, and then it becomes much longer. So it gets into all kinds of crap that Abby does that basically tries to destroy Mel's life. Throughout most of the novel, I wasn't sure how I felt. It was a fast read. It bounces between points of view. So every chapter is titled with the name of the character that it's kind of written from the perspective of. So I thought that was interesting. I wasn't sure, because I wasn't sure about the book throughout most of it. But then by the ending, and like once I finished it, I kind of realized, if you've watched, I kind of realized why I was still liking it, even though I had issues with it, if that makes sense. it ended up reminding me of the TV series What If on Netflix with Renee Zellweger. If you remember, like that was earlier this summer or back in the spring that came out. That show was so ridiculous. It was so ridiculous. But we all loved it for some reason. Like even like, you know, serious TV critics were praising that show. There was just something about it. And I think it's because it's kind of camp. Well, no, maybe camp's not the right word, but it's just silly and over the top and overly dramatic, and some of the decisions, it's like, you would never do that in real life. And the villain in this book, you know, Abby is definitely the villain. You pick that up pretty quickly. She's up to no good. She's intending to cause harm to Mel and her family. Why does Mel not put her foot down? That gets explained, and there are some twists. I did see them coming, but I didn't mind that. And I think if I were to reread it again, which I would be tempted to do, not like this year, but maybe a few years down the road, I wouldn't mind rereading it because it was fun. I think that's the thing. It was fun. If you don't take it seriously, it's a fun book. I thought it was going to be more of a dark, serious thriller that like dives into interpersonal relationships, and I don't feel like that's what it was. And so I think that's why I struggled with it a little bit throughout the book, because it just wasn't giving me what I was expecting. But at the end of it, when I looked back at the whole book kind of objectively and started thinking about it in the same way that I kind of watched and consumed What If on Netflix, I realized I actually did like this book a lot. So something to keep in mind. If you're looking for something just kind of silly, but also still a serious novel, like, I don't know, it does a number of things and it was really good. The next book I read was Dear Lily by, I keep trying not to blind you with the screen, Dear Lily by Drew Davies. I really wasn't sure about this book. I will be honest, I don't usually read books written from the perspective of female characters that are written by men. I don't read a lot of male authors in general, but I definitely don't usually. I honestly can't think of the last time I read a book that is contemporary women's fiction, like that specific genre, with a female POV written by a man. Drew Davies has kind of made me think, okay, maybe men can write like interesting, engaging female POVs and female characters. It's really difficult, but I think he did a pretty good job. Dear Lily is written in letter form. So it's the main character, who I can't remember the name of now. Lily is the sister. So the main character is writing letters to her sister Lily back in the UK. The main character has relocated to Copenhagen. Yeah, Copenhagen. And is just writing letters all about how she's adjusting, what's happening, how she's settling into her life. I loved reading a book kind of set in Copenhagen because it was really interesting. It made me kind of want to visit Copenhagen, and kind of hearing someone talk about adjusting to life overseas, because that's kind of what my novel is about. My character relocating to London and kind of the culture shock and settling in there. It was interesting to read that aspect of the story. The letters are funny. I mean, the main character, the way that she's written and the way that she writes her letters is just so funny and so engaging, and you really can picture what her life is like and all the funny things that are happening and all the people that she's meeting. I thought the letters were a really good format. I don't usually read books that are written in letter or diary format, but I've been pretty lucky. The few that I have, I actually really enjoyed. So I thought Dear Lily was really funny, really heartwarming, an interesting story of kind of personal experience and personal growth. Like I said, I don't want to give too much away, but it was really good. And it was a pretty fast read. Once I got into it, I really couldn't stop. So highly recommend that one. Then the next book I read was The Truth About Gemma Gray. And this is by Sophie Ranald. I This might have been my favorite. The Physic Book of Deliverance Dane was all like, I think that and this are like tied for favorite, and they're two completely opposite novels, but there was just something about this one that I loved. So the subtitle or the tagline is "She broke the internet, now can she mend her heart?" So the truth about Gemma Gray is about a young woman who is trying to make a go of life and career and love in London. She gets a job at a digital content creation company in London. She gets broken up with her boyfriend at the very, very beginning and makes a video. She's a YouTuber. She's a small YouTuber with like, I think she starts off with like 10,000 followers. So she makes a video one night just talking about having her heart broken and how miserable she feels, and just really kind of pours her whole heart out, thinking she only has 10,000 subscribers, which is kind of her first mistake, because we all know that's still a good number of subscribers, and the more subscribers you have, the more chances of something going viral like that are, because 10,000 is quite a lot. And so she wakes up the next morning, rushes to work, gets to work, everyone's looking at her weirdly, and she finds out the video has gone absolutely viral. Everybody's talking about it. So she starts, like, her subscriber count starts going up. She starts getting interest in management agencies. She ends up meeting other bigger YouTubers. Like, it just keeps building and growing, and it's kind of her figuring out her broken heart, getting into new relationships that may or may not be the best thing for her, her channel growing, her career growing, what does she actually want to do, kind of the struggle of figuring out your content when your channel does explode like that. Like, does she really want to keep making get ready with me videos or product review videos, and kind of feeling like she's outgrowing the content that now she's being expected to make. And I haven't read that. I'm sure there are a few other novels out there about YouTubers, but I haven't read very many. I think this is the first one I've read specifically about someone doing YouTube and like what the inside view of that is like, and I just thought it was fascinating. I loved the characters, I loved the plot, the subplots within the main plot. The journey that the main character Gemma goes on is, you know, really good. It's very well written, the characters are very believable, the plot development is good. It's not brilliant, you know, it's not great literature. It's definitely contemporary women's fiction. I refuse to like label it chick lit, but I guess that's what it would be considered. It's funny, but it's smart, and I fell in love with the main character, which is kind of, I think, what a good book should do. You should fall in love with the main character and want her to be happy, and I totally did. So I loved that book. And then the next book I read was Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered by Carrie Barrett. This is about witches, and it's that time of year. I definitely read a lot more witch and supernatural content around September, October time. And so this is by Carrie Barrett, who I've read, I think this is the third book I've read from her now. I've reviewed a couple other books. A Step in Time was one of my July or August books, and then there was another book that now I'm blanking on the title, but I really loved that. So I've loved both books that I've read from her so far. This one wasn't as good. It's about a young woman who lives in London. She's a family practice, she's a family lawyer, divorce, adoptions, that sort of thing. And her family all lives in Scotland. And her aunt gets sick with cancer, and so she's asked to come back and help run the family coffee shop in this small Scottish town. It's on a lake. It sounds amazing. And all the women are witches, and so they use some of their witch abilities to make scones that can give you confidence and cookies that can calm your nerves before an exam. Like, you know, they just like, it's cute, it's fun. And she's not a good witch because she's always kind of Like, she's not good at being a witch. She's a good witch. She's not a bad witch, but she's not got good witch abilities, if that makes sense. So she's called back up to the family business to help them while the aunt is sick. I think it's one in a series, so I would be willing to read the next book. I just felt like, compared to this author's other books that I've read, it just wasn't... The plot didn't feel as well developed. The character development was there for the most part, but the plot, the ending just felt a little bit anticlimactic. But overall, it was still fun, light, fluffy, what I was hoping and expecting from it. But yeah, I loved it. So those are all of my September books. What did you read last month in September? I would love to hear what books you've read, what books you would recommend, especially if any of them sound like they line up with the books that I've just told you about. I'm definitely looking for books. I've got 2 10+ hour flights coming up soon, so would love some book recommendations because I plan on putting a lot of books onto my Kindle before the flight. So let me know. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. Subscribe down below if you are not subscribed. Say hello in the comments and give me your book recommendations, and I will see you all soon in the next video. Thank you very much for watching this one. Bye-bye.